Chairman, Mr. Hochberg, are you familiar with a 2010 Export-Import Bank approved project in New Guinea?
Sorry, we need a little more information.
I'll give you some more. The majority, there are several partners in it, but the majority partner was ExxonMobil, 33% stake in this venture. You familiar with that deal?
Oh,
in 2010?
in Papua New Guinea, yes.
Papua New Guinea, yeah. You familiar with that?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
And you recall how much the financing was, the Export-Import Bank was responsible for in that deal?
We financed about $3 billion.
$3 billion. That sounds like a lot of money. Is that a big amount of financing for the Export-Import
That's a very
Bank?
large amount.
Is it the largest in the bank's history?
No, it is not.
Was it the largest in the bank's history at that time?
I believe it was up to that
According to
point.
media reports, it was the largest deal in XM history in 75 years and up to 2010. So what you're saying is you've done bigger deals since then. Were there problems with the deal? Any problems with that arrangement?
This is a large project in range of $20 billion project. It's proceeding. The cost is still within line with expectation, and it's, from my knowledge.
So there are no problems? And you're saying there are no problems with the deal?
Of course there are problems with it. It's a $20 billion giant infrastructure project in a remote part of the world.
Well, how about this problem? Your Inspector General told Congress last June that the bank couldn't account for $500 million. Would you define that as a problem?
Well, let me explain what the...
My guess is the taxpayers would. So the largest deal in XM history, largest deal in 75 years, $3 billion, and you can't account for a sixth of it? And that's not a problem?
$500 million is what's called local costs that are part of the transaction. We got certifications.
Oh, it's called money. It's called taxpayer finance money.
We got certifications from ExxonMobil that those costs were in line and were incurred in the project.
But you can't account for it.
We don't have.
So here's
no, we don't
Mr.
have.
Hochberg,
I can't account for it.
I got 3 more minutes. But so look, we learned, as I said in my opening statement, we learned that an employee was indicted 2 weeks ago. Last week he pled guilty. We learned of 31 open fraud investigations that both Inspector General and the Justice Department are looking into. We learned at last hearing that there may be more indictments coming in both the Gutierrez case and those open fraud investigations. And today, the committee now, I bet many members are just learning for the first time that the largest deal in XM history, a $3 billion deal, and the XM Bank can't account for 1/6 of that, can't account for $500 million of taxpayer-backed money, right?
No, I would not agree with that, sir.
That's what the press says. $3 billion deal, and you can't find. Not me. The Inspector General said you can't account for $500 million.
ExxonMobil is entitled to local costs incurred on the project.
But this
they
project
submitted certification for $500 million. What the Inspector General has asked for, he wants to see the actual invoices backing up the sub-suppliers.
And you don't have it, right?
We do not. We now require it. We did not require it at that time because we rely on certification of a Fortune 5 company to provide that information.
The point is, Inspector General said you can't account for it.
We can account.
1/6 of the deal.
The fact is that $3 billion.
Mr. Hochberg, I got a minute and 50 seconds. Let me say this. It gets worse. Before you approved the $3 billion deal, the largest in the bank's history, before you lost 1/6 of the money or can't account for 1/6 of the money, before you can't account for $500 million of taxpayer money, you had 4 employees, as they considered whether to approve the deal for ExxonMobil, had their travel expenses paid for by ExxonMobil. Isn't that correct, Mr. Hochberg?
Due diligence trips are paid for by the project sponsor. They don't come out of taxpayer money, so they're paid for.
Okay, well, that's a nice way of saying it. I think the taxpayers would say the potential recipient of taxpayer-backed financing is paying for the travel of the very people who are going to decide whether they get taxpayer-backed financing. Such a deal, particularly when it's $3 billion, and particularly when you can't account for 1/6 of that, $500 million.
This money is not lost. This money is owed to us by.
You know how much money ExxonMobil spent for those 4 employees who waited on that decision, Mr. Hochberg?
We sent engineers.
No, that's not the question.
Diligence.
You're not answering the question. How much money did they spend, ExxonMobil, on these 4 employees who waited on the decision that ultimately resulted in $500 million of taxpayer money going unaccounted for? Do you know how much?
The decision is made by the board of directors.
I'll tell you, the press says, Bloomberg says $97,367 for 4 employees. Now, that's about over $24,000 per employee. And guess where they went? You know where they went, Mr. Hochberg?
They went to Papua New Guinea.
Oh, and also London and Tokyo and the South Pacific, you know, paid vacations by the entity getting $3 billion, and you all can't account for 1/6 of that money. And yet you think we should just automatically reauthorize this bank with people indicted, people who pled guilty, and 31 open fraud investigations? Mr. Chairman, I yield back my last 2 seconds.
Gentleman.